You don't lose control all at once. That's the lie. The truth is, it happens slowly, quietly, like a rope slipping through your fingers 1 inch at a time, until one day you look up and realize you're not holding anything anymore. Life is holding you, tugging you around, pulling you through moods you don't understand, conversations you don't want to be in, responsibilities you didn't choose, and it all feels heavier than it should. Like something's always just slightly off, slightly overwhelming, slightly too loud. But what if I told you, this isn't bad luck, this isn't personality, this isn't just how life is. This is what happens when 4 forces rule you instead of serve you: your mouth, your mind, your emotions, your money. Master these 4, and life starts listening to you. Ignore them, and you'll spend years being pushed by currents you didn't create, reacting to things you should have been directing, waiting for peace that was never meant to arrive by accident. You've probably already felt it. That sting of regret after you said too much. Or maybe you didn't say enough. Maybe you were honest too late. Maybe your silence cost you something. Because words aren't just noise. Words are power. Every sentence you speak shapes how others see you. But more dangerously, every word you whisper to yourself becomes a brick in the house you live in. You say, "I'm tired," and your body agrees. You say, "I'm not good enough," and your mind starts proving it. You say, "I can't," and the door slams shut before you even tried turning the handle. But here's what the Stoics understood better than most. Restraint is strength. Not silence, restraint. Knowing when to speak is power. Knowing when to stay silent is wisdom. And knowing what not to say to yourself? That's liberation. Every day, you're narrating your life inside your head. And if you don't control that voice, it will shape you into someone you were never meant to become. Someone smaller, someone angrier, someone scared. Because the mouth, when untrained, becomes a weapon turned inward. But there's another battlefield that runs deeper. It's not the words, it's the thoughts. The ones that show up before the words ever leave your mouth. The stories you believe without checking. The fears you rehearse like scripts. The comparisons that sneak in when you're scrolling at midnight, wondering why everyone else seems happier, stronger, more ahead. Your mind doesn't always work against you on purpose, but it will sabotage you if you don't teach it how to think. It'll grab onto worst-case scenarios like lifeboats. It'll replay your mistakes louder than your wins. And if you're not careful, you'll start to trust every thought as truth, even the ones that are quietly destroying you. That's the paradox of the human mind. It can create heaven or hell without changing a single thing in the outside world. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that line? That's not just a quote to feel good about. That's a line to build a life around. Because until you areas your attention, your focus, your narrative, you're not living life. You're surviving your own imagination. So what does mastering the mind actually look like? It's not pretending everything's okay. It's not putting on a fake smile and chanting affirmations. It's learning to see clearly, to pause when your thoughts race, to question your assumptions, to understand that not every voice in your head is your own. Some of them are echoes, old criticisms, social pressure, childhood fears, and they don't deserve your obedience. You don't have to chase every thought. You can observe it, challenge it, replace it, but only if you recognize that your mind is a tool, and tools need training. But even if you speak wisely and think clearly, there's still a wild horse waiting to take control, emotion. And make no mistake, it's not about suppressing it. The Stoics were never about becoming robots. They were about mastery, not denial. Because emotions are not enemies, they're messengers. But if you don't learn their language, they become tyrants. You feel anger, and instead of listening to what it's trying to say, you explode. Or you bury it. Or you turn it inward until you hate yourself for feeling it in the first place. You feel fear, and instead of pausing and evaluating the risk, you retreat. You shrink. You call it safety, but it's just avoidance in a costume. Controlling emotion doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop reacting blindly. You see the wave coming, but you don't jump overboard. You brace, you breathe. You ride it out without destroying everything in your path. That's discipline. That's power. And it's the only way you move through life with integrity. But even if you've tamed your mouth, your mind, and your emotions, there's one last trap that still controls millions of people every day. Money. Money is not evil. It's not holy either. It's a magnifier. It reveals what's already inside you. If you're lost, money makes you wander faster. If you're greedy, money makes you bolder about it. If you're disciplined, generous, and clear, money becomes a tool for impact. But without self-control, money is a leash, a golden chain around your neck. You start spending to impress. You start earning to escape. You start defining your worth by numbers. And no number will ever be enough if it's trying to fill a hole that's actually emotional. You don't need to be rich to be free, but you do need to be intentional. The Stoics taught simplicity not because they hated wealth, but because they refused to be owned by it. They knew that every coin you spend is a vote for what you value, a vote for who you are. And most people, they're not voting, they're reacting. They're numbing themselves through purchases, chasing dopamine instead of purpose. But when you master your relationship with money, something strange happens. You stop needing more. And because you don't need more, you become more powerful. Because your decisions aren't coming from fear anymore, they're coming from alignment. So if you felt scattered, stuck, frustrated, this is the invitation. Master your mouth. Speak with intention. Master your mind. Think with clarity. Master your emotions. Feel with responsibility. Master your money. Spend with alignment. Because you're not powerless, you're just untrained. And once you realize that, you stop waiting for the world to hand you control. You start building it from the inside out. You ever wonder why some people move through life with this quiet steadiness, while others are constantly pulled in 100 directions? It's not luck. It's not that their lives are easier. It's that somewhere along the way, they stopped negotiating with chaos. They started choosing what they'd allow and what they'd never allow again. And that kind of clarity and that kind of power, it doesn't come from motivational quotes or sudden breakthroughs. It comes from mastering one thing at a time, starting small, staying consistent, choosing not to live at the mercy of external noise. But here's the catch. The world will constantly test you to see if you really mean it. You say you want peace, but then someone provokes you, and your mouth moves before your mind does. You say you want clarity, but then you pick up your phone and flood your brain with 30 different voices before you even brush your teeth. You say you want emotional balance, but then one person's bad mood ruins your entire day, like you handed them the remote to your nervous system. You say you want freedom, but then your paycheck arrives and disappears in the same week because you're trying to silence an internal hunger with external things. That's what most people don't realize. The path to strength is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like a grand transformation. It feels like little decisions, invisible victories, choosing not to respond, choosing not to overthink, choosing to pause before spending, choosing to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. Over time, those small choices shape the person you become. And the person you become? That's someone even chaos doesn't know how to shake. But let's be honest. discipline gets lonely, especially when the people around you don't value it, when your restraint looks like weakness to them, when your calm feels like coldness, when your simplicity makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them they're still ruled by their urges. That's the price of mastery. You lose shallow approval, but you gain depth. You stop performing and start becoming. And once you begin seeing life through the lens of self-mastery, everything changes. The things that used to trigger you start looking like teachers. That coworker who gossips? They're not your enemy. They're your reminder to stay grounded. That family member who always criticizes? They're your invitation to not need external validation. That wave of doubt at 2 a.m.? It's your moment to decide whether fear is a voice or a command. And when your bank account gets low? That's not panic. That's an opportunity to reassess, to reset, to remember that wealth isn't security. Clarity is. And clarity, my friend, is something most people never taste, because clarity is quiet. And we're addicted to noise. We want to fill every silence, answer every message, explain every boundary. But the ones who master themselves, they let the silence speak for They don't rush to respond just to be understood. They don't break their own rules just to avoid discomfort. They don't chase applause, they chase alignment. You'll know you're growing when you stop needing to prove it. You'll know you're mastering your mind when your thoughts get quieter, not because you've silenced them, but because you've stopped believing every one of them. You'll know you've mastered your mouth when you walk away from arguments that once pulled you in like magnets. Because now, peace is more valuable than being right. You'll know you're mastering emotion when your anger arrives and you greet it, not with shame, not with suppression, but with patience, like a storm rolling over a mountain that no longer crumbles. And you'll know you're mastering your money when it stops controlling your self-worth, because now what you buy is an extension of who you are, not a cover for what you're afraid to face. The world will try to sell you 1,000 ways to feel powerful. Flashy success, loud confidence, surface-level control. But real power? It's silent. It's invisible. It's the power of choosing your response when everything in you wants to react. The power of pausing when everyone else is rushing. The power of saying no without apology. The power of walking away without bitterness. The power of standing still while the world tries to spin you into someone you're not. But don't expect the world to congratulate you for it. Self-mastery doesn't get parades. It doesn't trend. Because it's not flashy, it's foundational. It's boring to the undisciplined, but to the one who's tasted it, even once, it's everything. Because once you've had even one moment where you chose peace over reaction, or clarity over noise, or intention over impulse, you never go back. Not because you're perfect, but because you've seen what's possible. And that vision? That's the fuel. That's what keeps you going when everyone else is still making excuses. You're not chasing perfection. You're choosing power quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And the most beautiful part? You start becoming the kind of person others feel safe around. Not because you're soft, but because you're stable. Because your energy isn't chaotic. Because you don't need to dominate the room to feel valuable. Because your peace is felt even when you don't speak. That's the ripple effect. That's the hidden influence of the self-mastered. And you're building that now. With every pause, every boundary, every hard decision. You're not just changing your habits. You're changing your presence, your tone, your reputation, your future. And it all started with a decision no one saw. To master the parts of you the world taught you to ignore. Until you master those, you'll always feel just a little bit behind. But once you do, nothing owns you anymore. There comes a moment, quiet, unremarkable on the outside, when you realize you're no longer begging for peace from a world that profits off your restlessness. That moment might arrive while you're sitting alone in a room you've finally decluttered, or while you're walking away from a conversation you would have stayed in just to keep someone else comfortable, or when you check your bank account, not with panic, but with precision. Not because everything's perfect, but because you're finally the one steering. And that's when it clicks. Peace was never something to be found out there. It was always what you were leaking through the conversations you didn't need to have, through the emotions you let dictate your direction, through the thoughts you believed just because they were loud, through the spending you did trying to feel better, look better, distract yourself just long enough to not feel the thing you actually needed to face. And once you see the leak, you can't unsee it. You start patching the holes, not all at once, but steadily. You say less, not because you're holding back, but because you no longer need to fill the silence to feel seen. You think clearer, not because life is easier, but because you've trained your mind to stop catastrophizing every little thing. You react slower, not because you've become passive, but because you've stopped mistaking urgency for importance. And you spend differently, not because you're cheap, but because you're not trying to impress people who don't even know themselves. And here's the unexpected part. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels weird, lonely at times. You'll have days where you wonder if you're missing out, where old habits knock on your door like familiar ghosts. Just one night, just one scroll, just one impulse. And you'll be tempted, because comfort is loud and discipline is quiet. But every time you choose to stay the course, your self-trust deepens. And self-trust? That's the true currency. That's what makes you unshakable. Because the world will always have something new to pull your attention. Some shiny object, some urgent panic, some cultural addiction to outrage or desire. But when you've mastered your mouth, your mind, your emotions, your money, you don't get pulled in every direction anymore. You decide what enters your space. You filter. You protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. And people will notice. They might not say it, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the stillness in you, the clarity. They'll try to figure it out. Did something happen? You seem different. But nothing happened. You just stopped outsourcing your strength. You stopped needing permission to feel calm. You stopped renting out your identity to every passing emotion or moment of chaos. You became the source. And here's what no one tells you. Once you become the source of your own stability, people who thrived off your confusion will start to fall away. They won't know how to be around you without the old drama, the old stories, the old roles you used to play. But let them go. That's not your loss. That's alignment doing its job. Because real power doesn't cling, it chooses. And you, finally, are choosing. You're not swayed by flattery. You're not shattered by criticism. You hear both, and you stay centered. You don't spiral into overthinking every decision, every conversation. You trust your process. You trust your silence. You stop negotiating your boundaries like they're on sale. You hold them, not as walls, but as gates. You decide who gets access to your energy and who doesn't. And that shift, that internal recalibration, it becomes the quiet revolution of your life. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer leaks, fewer distractions, fewer stories convincing you that life will only begin once everything is perfect. Because you know better now. You know life begins the moment you stop handing over the keys to your own mind. The moment you stop saying yes just to be liked. The moment you stop blaming the world for things you never took the time to master. That's what makes you dangerous in the best way. Because now your peace isn't dependent, it's disciplined. And the more disciplined it becomes, the more freedom you feel. Not because you've escaped responsibility, but because now you're responsible for the right things. Your focus, your energy, your values, your direction. Everything else? Noise. And when you finally stop chasing noise, you start hearing your own voice again. You hear the clarity that was buried beneath years of conditioning, distraction, and emotional chaos. You hear the part of you that knew all along. Life was never about controlling the world. It was about learning not to be controlled by it. There's a strange kind of silence that comes when your life stops being ruled by reaction. It's not empty. It's not cold. It's precise, intentional. You wake up and there's no panic, no mental race to check your phone, your feed, your worth in someone else's digital reflection. You sit with your thoughts instead of drowning them in noise. You make your coffee slower. You hear your breath. And in that breath, there's no crisis. Just clarity. You realize you've spent so many years gripping things that never belonged to you. Opinions that weren't your own. Expectations that were silently inherited. Roles you didn't choose but wore anyway because that's what the world rewarded. The fixer, the overthinker, the people pleaser, the silent sufferer. All costumes, heavy ones. And each one stole a little piece of your peace. But now you don't wear them. You don't perform for approval. You don't offer your spirit in exchange for someone else's comfort. You've learned that just because someone is uncomfortable with your boundaries doesn't mean you're wrong for setting them. And just because they call your distance selfish doesn't mean it isn't self-preservation. Because when you control yourself, you save yourself. Quietly, powerfully, consistently. And no one claps for that. No one throws a party when you choose self-restraint over revenge. When you let go of the argument. When you walk away instead of making a scene. When you delete the paragraph you were going to send and write nothing instead. But those moments, they're the foundation of your strength. The unseen discipline, the invisible muscles, the sacred refusal to lose yourself just to win a temporary battle. Because now, you understand what most people never do. Peace is not passive. It's not the absence of struggle. It's the mastery of response. And mastering your response doesn't mean becoming numb. It means becoming precise. You still feel everything, but you no longer obey every feeling like it's a command. You can feel rage and still respond with grace. You can feel fear and still walk forward. You can feel rejection and not become it. That's what Stoicism actually is. Not suppression, not detachment, but control, emotional precision, mental clarity, inner authority. It's the calm that comes from knowing you're not at the mercy of every passing emotion or external storm. You can be surrounded by chaos and still choose your posture. You can be misunderstood and still stay rooted in your truth. You can be disrespected and still respond in a way that honors your values, not their dysfunction. And people won't always understand that. They'll call you cold, arrogant, unbothered. But what they're really seeing is someone they can't manipulate, someone who doesn't flinch, someone who doesn't chase validation, approval, or comfort at the cost of self-respect. And that, to a world addicted to reaction, looks like rebellion. Because it is. You've rebelled against the cultural script, the one that says you're only valuable if you're constantly available. That says your worth depends on your productivity. That says you should never be too still, too quiet, too sure of yourself. But you've seen through it now. You've stopped running, stopped apologizing for your needs, stopped trying to fix people who refuse to fix themselves. And in that space, something new is born. Simplicity. It starts small. You clear the clutter. You say no more often. You stop entertaining conversations that go nowhere. You stop justifying your healing. You stop explaining your peace. And the world feels lighter, not because it changed, but because you did. Because you're no longer reacting to everything. You're choosing. You're not proving. You're practicing. You're not trying to be impressive. You're just finally being aligned. And when you're aligned, you don't need applause. You don't need noise. You don't even need the world to notice, because you've noticed. You've tasted a different way of living, a different kind of freedom, one that doesn't come from controlling anyone else, just from finally mastering yourself. And that mastery, it feels like still water, like the storm finally passed, like coming home to a version of you that never needed to chase anything in the first place. There's something quiet that happens once you reclaim your power, not the loud kind, not the kind that shouts in the room or flexes to prove itself. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to be seen to be real, the kind that's felt in your silence, in your decisions, in your refusal to live in reaction to things you can outgrow. That's what you've built, piece by piece, not by controlling the world, but by mastering the only thing that ever really mattered: yourself, your words, your mind, your emotions, your money. 4 corners of a foundation that most people never stabilize because they're too busy chasing someone else's version of success. They build empires out of image, then crumble in private. But not you. You've chosen a different path, one that doesn't reward you instantly, but strengthens you permanently. Because when your mouth is disciplined, you stop making promises you can't keep, stop giving explanations no one deserves, and stop using your voice to defend what doesn't need defending. You speak less, but when you do, your words land. They carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're true. When your mind is clear, you stop replaying conversations that already ended. You stop fantasizing about versions of life that never existed. You become strategic instead of reactive, intentional instead of anxious. You move with focus because you're no longer distracted by things that were never yours to control. You've stopped arguing with reality, and in doing so, you've gained the freedom most people spend their whole lives avoiding. When your emotions are in check, you stop being a puppet to pain. You feel everything, but you are ruled by nothing. You don't lash out, you don't shrink, you don't freeze under the pressure of someone else's chaos. You pause, you process, and then you proceed with purpose. That emotional control, it's not detachment, it's strength, it's power, it's peace. And when your money is no longer a mystery, when it's tracked, respected, directed, you stop living like you're at the mercy of every impulse. You stop buying things to impress people you secretly envy. You stop tying your self-worth to your net worth because you've seen through the game. And now you're playing by different rules. Your rules. Quiet ones, strategic ones, stoic ones. And here's what no one tells you. When you master these 4 things, your life doesn't just become easier. It becomes quieter, sharper, stronger. You stop chasing everything you used to think would save you. The recognition, the validation, the distraction. You stop trading your peace for approval, your time for comfort, your integrity for applause. You stop bleeding for causes that weren't yours to begin with. You stop sacrificing your future for the comfort of your past. You stop abandoning yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, the whole world shifts. Not because it changed, but because you're no longer molding yourself to fit it. You've become rooted, grounded, untouchable, not because you're unshakable, but because you've learned how to rebuild every single time. You've learned to protect your peace like a sacred temple, not a suggestion. You've learned to choose your words like bricks, not bullets. You've learned to filter your thoughts like a wise guard, not a desperate host. You've learned to feel your feelings without obeying them. You've learned to make money serve you, not the other way around. That's mastery, not perfection, not control over the world, control over yourself. And most people will never taste that. They'll keep looking for power in how many followers they gain, how many arguments they win, how many things they own. But they'll still feel empty, still feel confused, because the world taught them how to perform, not how to live. But you've chosen something different, and it shows. In your presence, in your stillness, in your strength that doesn't beg to be noticed, you've become your own anchor. And the beautiful, brutal truth is, no one can do this for you. No one can build this for you. The world can offer distraction, entertainment, noise, but only you can choose discipline. Silence, sovereignty. Only you can master your life, or be mastered by it. And once you've tasted that mastery, you don't go back. You don't crave chaos. You don't tolerate disrespect. You don't spend your days reacting to people who don't know themselves. You create, you lead, you choose. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, powerless, small, remember this: it's not about controlling everything. It's about mastering the few things that control everything else: your mouth, your mind, your emotions, your money. Until you master these 4 things, you'll always be at the mercy of something outside of you. But the moment you do, you become free, truly free. And nothing in this world is more powerful than that.